It's time for part 2 of our visit to Shrimpy Business with the actual shrimp room tour. And more than shrimp room, right? They have fish and plants now, but let's actually walk in and take a look at the facility itself, kind of get an understanding of some of the processes that they do, how they fill their orders, how they select their shrimp, like what their quarantine looks like, right? All those kind of things. I will apologize because there's several times where just the way that I have my camera, it focuses on the the facility behind Nick, and Nick is like not in great focus. I'm sorry for that. It's I'm pretty embarrassed, even though I'm laughing about it. But as editing it, I was watching it. I'm like, ah. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into Shrimpy Business's new facility and get a look around and kind of get an idea of what's going on there.
Let's walk through some of the big changes, which is to say from basement to full dedicated facility.
Yeah.
And the decisions you made and why you're doing like what you're doing with your shrimp versus the fish, etc.
Yeah, so we did quite a bit of changes. So in our garage, we had them on just, I guess, the Home Depot shelves, and we basically had a bunch of 20 longs for the Neos, and they work great in the garage because there was a space constraint, but it was a real pain to take care of whatever it was, 150 20-gallon and 10-gallon tanks.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a challenge. So when we moved in, we gave it a lot of thought whether we wanted custom tanks for the shrimp or we wanted these ponds. But at the end we decided to go with these ponds. One, because we can put a large volume of water, and we can put a bunch of shrimp in one with one color. But for our popular shrimp, we have 2 or 3 totes for the same color. So these, they're other hobbyists, other channels have used them. They talk about them, and when I saw them, I was like, "That's a great idea," and it's local to us, and the freight was very reasonable because we could get them right here. And the other benefit is that shrimp prefer cooler temperatures, and having it close to the ground actually helps with the temperature and keeping everything cool. So most people don't think about it because we have 20-foot ceilings. So we want to keep everything close to the ground to keep everything as cool as possible, especially during the hot summer months.
Do you find that the concrete floors help dissipate some heat?
I think so. So this is our first summer here. We found that that they don't go above 73, 74 degrees is kind of where the highest we found, and I thought that was pretty cool, pun intended. Yeah, so it worked really well.
But you only do this with the Neos, correct?
Only the Neos, because the Caridinas, as most people know, they require a special substrate to keep the water soft and more acidic. But we can talk about that later for that setup. But for the Neos, we went with these totes with no substrate, and if we found soft water, we do add in minerals to keep bring the hardness up.
Okay.
And the pH up.
And then I noticed you've got 2 different sizes of totes.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk why things are where they are and kind of what the process is?
Yeah. So as we bring in new shrimp, these actually are our holding tanks for the new shrimp. But before that, the shrimp that were in these totes, we'll move them to the smaller totes. So that way we can quarantine the new shrimp for a period of time. So we quarantine roughly around 3 weeks or so before selling. But in the meantime, while they're quarantining, we have these totes here, which have shrimp that have been here for a while, and we catch out of these. And that's kind of our quarantine rotation process to make sure we sell shrimp that are healthy, have gone through at least 1 molt, and they're stable.
Okay. And about how long?
Process.
How long is that quarantine process to get through the first molts and everything locally?
We found roughly around 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 weeks we find 1 to 2 weeks. Actually, they're relatively stable. But to be safe, we typically push it to around 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So because we have a pretty good relation with our supplier, and we found a good packing style. We actually visited him last year in Taiwan to kind of talk through some details. And we found that when we kind of nailed down a good packing process, and a good shipping process with enough water, with enough shrimp in each bag, and the whole quarantine process on his end to make sure they get to us healthy. So when we get them, we don't have to do too much most of the time. They're usually pretty stable.
We'll get this question.
Yeah.
And I asked it originally when we were first kind of doing a small tour before filming.
Yeah.
How hard is it to catch shrimp in these big totes
Yeah.
for filling orders? Or maybe you want to walk us through your process?
Sure. Yeah. So it's not too bad actually. Initially, I thought it was going to be a pain, but it's not too bad. So we catch them. So first step, we catch them, and you can see each tote has each dedicated container and net. So that's really important to prevent cross contamination. So this is our Sakura cherry shrimp tote. So catch a whole bunch, put them in here. So these are our cherry shrimp. These are lower grade cherry shrimp. So our packing process, typically we catch a whole bunch and then we put it on a little trolley and then we'll go to our bagging station and we will bag. We have a pick list to know how many bags of cherry shrimp or how many bags of blue shrimp we have for the day, and we go through that list and bag every single one. In this case, I'm the bagger, so I bag every single shrimp that we sell out of here. I bag, and Gwen does the snails and the plants and the Caridina. So that's kind of our process. But every single shrimp we sell out of Shrimpy Business, I currently handpick personally, which is a lot of shrimp for one person.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this kind of our process in summary.
So the big thing that I find really interesting is that rather than each individual order, you're going to grab in bulk, and that allows you to, as you're filling each bag, do your quality control to look for shrimp health, shrimp color.
Yeah, exactly.
And I actually love that process. I think that's super smart.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it's a process where we want to make sure to inspect each shrimp that leaves this facility as much as possible, that we have a visual inspection to make sure they're healthy one and they don't have any parasites and they're healthy living in this facility. And so our dog is playing in the background. So.
Yeah.
That's like that.
Mochi.
Yeah, our dog Mochi. So we do a visual inspection, or I do a visual inspection to make sure that the colony is doing okay and everything is healthy before it gets shipped out. And we do that for literally every single shrimp that's out of here, that ships out of here. So that helps us to kind of know the status of how the shrimp are doing in the tank, because it's really hard to see in the tote. That's the downside of having them in the pond, because you can't in a tank you can kind of have them at eye level and see whether there's any issues. But now catching a bunch at one time, we can kind of know, okay, there's this issue with this tote we shouldn't be setting out this tote, and we should quarantine them longer. So that's kind of the way we inspect these.
I'll have to ask, because we see all these totes, we know it's a ton of water, especially for shrimp.
Yeah.
When you're bringing in an order, about how many shrimp are you bringing in? If we do say just in Neocaridinas, as
just
an example.
Neos, roughly. I mean, depending on the time of year, but I would say roughly 40,000-ish, 30 to 40,000 euros, roughly.
And about how long is that going to last you before you have to order again?
Yeah, so we try to keep them here about, depending on the time of year, again, it's around 6 to 8 weeks. We keep this shrimp before we have to order a new batch.
Okay. And that includes your quarantine time too, yeah?
That includes quarantine time too.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, again, we kind of mentioned this, but this whole area is basically quarantine.
Yeah, this whole area is quarantine for 3 weeks while we catch out of the smaller toads. And then when quarantine is over, we'll switch from the smaller toads to the larger toads.
Okay, so the small toads then become quarantine for the next batch?
No. So these toads will become quarantine for the next batch. So what happens is I'll catch all the shrimp from the old batch, from the large toads, and move them to the smaller toads.
Gotcha.
And then these larger toads will become the quarantine for the new batch. And then when quarantine is over, we'll start catching out these larger toads. And then we just repeat the process over and over again. We found that way it's just, from a space constraint, it's really, the easier way to do it is just to have this, but times 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a large-ish facility, but it's still, it's not that big from a grand scheme of things to do this twice. So I found that this is kind of the best of both worlds, where we can actually have a rotation of our shrimp and keeping them quarantined and keeping them healthy, while maximizing our space in this area. Yeah. So good question. Initially, I just thought we just have double of this and we just flip flop, but we found that this is a much better setup because we don't need to take up that much space.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Then I want to talk a little bit about just like how you set them up, your water change system. Kind of note, like, get people in close, you can see kind of the inlet, some of the air going down to a sponge or two, and then you've got a sponge on your outtake, obviously, to make sure we don't lose any shrimp. But tell me a little bit about the design of the water change system, like how often you're changing water, all that kind of stuff.
So our water change system, I mean, give a shout out to Corey. I mean, Corey, I'm a fan too, so I watch his videos, and he's been really graceful in sharing this information. So I can't take credit for this particular design because this is what he shared on his video. So thanks, Corey. So the way it works is water comes in, it goes into our a carbon filter which removes chlorine, and then it goes through our temperature control mixing valve, where a thermostatic mixing valve, we mixes hot and cold water to give us the temperature that we want.
Yeah.
And then it goes through the sprinkler system, which time our water changes, and it comes out. The water comes out through this spigot here. Water comes in and overflows to the overflow, and then we have a trench drain here, and everything just runs towards that trench drain. So everything stays as dry as possible. But so far, I mean, I really enjoy the system. And for these smaller toads, same thing, but except because these are smaller toads, we tested these valves and this RO tubing, and actually they work really well. And it looks really cool, but we actually zip tied. I mean, yeah. So Gwen was in here zip tying all these. She did an awesome job, and they haven't moved. And it looks crude, but it works.
Well, I think that's the important thing when you're not open to the public is it's about function.
Exactly.
What works the best rather than looks the best.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I love the system as how it's set up because it's kind of similar. Again, you mentioned Corey, but like when he's done these totes, you've got big, clean, like open areas to walk, so that you're not worried about knocking into piping.
Right.
And then your piping is very contained if we kind of walk over this way.
And the big reason we went with these on these smaller totes is because of this space constraint of this area, we wanted enough room to push trolleys through between these totes. But this tote, we found that there's no space, right? So if I needed to go back here, or someone needed to go back here, then we can just pop these off, right? And then pop these off and just go back here if there's a leak or something, or we needed to service the back of these totes, we could easily do that. Well, if I were to hard pipe this, I couldn't. No one could go back here. So that was the thought process using these. While on the larger totes, we could have strut on the ground, and they all bolted down to the ground, and we don't have that issue because we have enough space back there.
Now, I asked this before, but we're going to get it in the comments, guaranteed.
Yeah. Okay.
What's with the copper plumbing?
So, our plumber, which we hired, so we allow the copper piping. I'm not a plumber, so we hired a professional plumber. That's why everything looks great. We have strut on the wall. You can see they're super neat. Gwen and I have no capability of doing such a thing, so those are all done by the plumber. Gwen and I did all the drains, so we drilled all the totes. We did all this stuff that connects to the totes, but to bring water from the water source to the totes is all the plumber's job. He did a great job. And the short answer is because the plumber preferred it. It's a dog sneezing.
Dog.
So the plumber preferred it, and to be honest, it's more of it just lasts longer.
Yeah.
You know, they last a lot longer than PVC. I don't really need to worry about leaks in the future. If someone hits it on accident, I don't need to worry about it because it's not going anywhere. Unless, like you said, we go through an earthquake or something.
Catastrophic earthquake.
Yeah, then I mean we have other issues. But other than that, that's the main issue. And he was pretty. He preferred it, and also because, yeah, I can see why. Because if we run it all with PVC, you know, we need more strut on the wall. It's gonna sag in some places, and it's just not ideal for this setup.
Yeah.
But with copper, we don't need to worry about that. It's more of a rigid piping. And folks are gonna ask, why copper? Because copper is bad for shrimp. But what I found is elemental copper itself is not. It doesn't leach into the water. Copper sulfate, on the other hand, is bad for shrimp because it's you know, it's in the water itself. Elemental copper doesn't. I mean, it doesn't go through a reaction where it leaches. It becomes copper sulfate. If it does, it's very minute, and I never really had issues with copper piping. And so far we've never had issues with copper. But from a, I guess, chemistry standpoint, it shouldn't shouldn't affect shrimp.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was I joked that we're going to get a keyboard warrior who's going to be like, "Oh, you're going to kill all your shrimp."
Yeah.
And remember, folks, chemical engineer. Chemical engineer. Right? Let's start talking fish. We've talked shrimp for a bit. So we're at your fish section. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how you're set up and, again, kind of what you've gone with, what's working for you and why.
Yeah, so in our garage we had them in we had 20 gallons with sponge filters. It's kind of a simple setup for nanofish, but for this expansion we decided to go with a wet dry sump system. So as you pan down the row, we have different sumps, one sump for each system. So we did this because it was ease of care, so we could do easy water changes to each sump. We'll talk through about that later. But also, if we wanted to quarantine this whole system, we could. So as we bring in fish, we quarantine them with each rack, so that way we don't contaminate other systems. So that way, we can make sure that they're good. Treat the whole system if we need to. So we for our fish, we only treat for the tank bred ones. We don't really pre-treat them. We keep them here for about 3-4 weeks or so, just to make sure they're stable before selling them. And if we see anything, we will treat them either with antibiotics or deworming as we go, just based on the symptoms. For wild caught, which we don't really have that many wild caught, most of our stuff is tank bred. We try to keep it that way. But for wild caught, we do pre-treat them with dewormers, and antibiotics beforehand. Just based on experience, that works best for us. So wet dry system, we have the bio balls here, and then we go through a mechanical filtration with the sponges. We have bio rings, and then we have the crushed coral to add in the cage at the end. So this is a pretty high oxygenated system, as you can see from the bubbles on the first chamber. So our manufacturer for the tanks, it is all custom tanks. They made the drain higher than the return a little, so that sucks in air as the water drains. So that provides oxygenation. So the other thing I love about this is because with sponge filters, it's a real pain because all the fish hides behind them. And now we have a bigger tank where it's just easier to catch fish as we fulfill orders. And as we fulfill orders, we catch the water from the sump, from the same system, just so that it doesn't shock the fish in any way with new changes in water parameters.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to look at the back of the system. So Gwen and I did all this painstakingly. So we did all the plumbing ourselves. Took us a long time to figure out what worked best, but this is kind of where we landed on. So we have the return with valves to kind of control, balance the flows at each. So we have one pump for 3 rows, which I didn't think it was gonna work this well, but actually it was not too bad to balance out the flows from each for each tank. And then we decided to keep the warehouse cool, So we heat every single system with a heater. So we keep all our systems around 80 degrees for our tropical fish. And yeah, so water just goes in. It drains from each tank. It goes in the sump through the different chambers, comes back up, and it goes through our UV sterilizer. So we invested in pretty heavy duty UV sterilizers to make sure there's it kills pathogens, and it's been working great for us. They're definitely a lifesaver. So yeah, that's kind of the system in general. It took us a few renditions to kind of figure out what worked best as far as the drain location and the returns. But we're pretty happy with this. And yeah, like I said, water changes. It comes in through these copper pipes all the way down to each sump.
So rather than water changing into the tank, you're going direct to the sump.
Exactly, yeah. Direct to the sump. So the flow rate is real slow, just to make sure we have enough dilution. So we find that that's the best way to go for this. So make sure it doesn't overwhelm the drain, because each drain ties into the same thing, same header, and it's just a 1-inch hose. So I decided to go with a hose versus PVC just because I can kick it.
Yeah, just in case.
Just in case, if someone comes here with a trolley and kicks a PVC pipe, it might crack out some. So with this system, there's a lot more give, and that way I have less risk of cracking the sump. So that's the reason why we went with that. And it all ties into this strut, and the last portion of the header just goes into our trench drain. So it's a lifesaver, water change wise, where I do not miss doing water changes manually at all. So we put a lot of thought in this just to make sure it's one, we can quarantine our animals and treat them as necessary, and we'll also find a balance of maintaining the tanks and keeping nitrates low. So it's definitely a tough balance to find. Ideally you want each tank to be isolated, but with a business like this, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the happy medium we found, where we could quarantine the rack we wanted to, and also keeping our water changes as convenient as possible.
And about how much water percent-wise are you changing each week?
Roughly, I would say about 25%-ish, 30%. Okay. So what we do is we catch, when we fulfill orders Monday to Wednesday, we catch water from the same system and we drain down the system. And then every Monday through Wednesday, and it kicks back on at the end of the day to top up the sump, because the sump level will be lower after fulfilling out the orders. So that's kind of our water changes.
Yeah.
And then throughout the week, we'll do 2 more small water changes. So that way, water changes are the small each time, just to prevent shock to the system. So that's what we found works best for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've got 2 rows of fish plus snails.
Yeah, 2 rows of fish plus snails. And the great thing about having a sump for just a rack like this is we could, adjust the water parameters for what we have in. So the snail tanks, we have them in harder water. So I put in more crushed coral and also add in minerals as well, and salt to maintain a higher pH and also keep a higher GH and pH, and also keep the pH stable. So yeah. So when we do have more live bearers in the future, for example, we can do the exact same thing to harder water so that the live bearers will be happier.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We many hours and weeks building this out and figuring it out and making mistakes. We're not plumbers by any means, but yeah, we're pretty happy so far. But definitely many weeks and many hours of frustration, a little bit of tears. But yeah, we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think from both aesthetics and functional, it looks great.
Thank you.
And then we've got our plant section over here. Yeah.
Yeah. So our plant section here. For the plants, we have everything tied to a single sump, and we have a CO2 injection here. So we use an inline atomizer. We found that worked best for this setup. And yeah, so it's a pretty simple system, similar to the fish. Everything ties into a single sump. And we do water changes through this sump as well. And for plants, we'll do a larger water change for the plants. So we do a large water change every week, just to get some fresh water in. Yeah, it seems to be working pretty well. So our plants, I'm pretty happy with how they're growing, and they seem really healthy. Although it's a pretty small footprint, we can actually store quite a bit of plants in this area here.
Yeah, you've got a great plant density when I was walking through earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to kind of the last shelf here.
Yeah, so there's a Caridina shelf. So we have microcrabs in here just because they're so small. We can't put them in. If we put them in a tote, they'll just be lost. So we keep them in a 20-gallon. And yeah, for the Caridinas, we have them in 20 gallons and 10 gallons still. I switched over to the manual filters. We used to use just those simple. I think most group hobbies use those dual, sponge filters, but those clog so often, and these work great. And we can walk through the back and find out why I like them, because it's easy to do water changes for the back side as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is our Caridina setup with shrimp soil to keep the pH at around a 6.0 or so. So we keep our TDS roughly around 100, so 90 to 100. So yeah, this is our selection here, and we'll space more tanks in the future. But this is what we have for now. But we do plan to keep more and breed more down the line for the Caridinas. Yeah.
Can we talk about the white elephant in the background?
Yeah, so there's our styrofoam here.
Let's walk over there.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of impressed by the amount of styrofoam you have. Because usually this is all hidden away whenever someone's doing shipping.
Yeah, so this is our styrofoam area. We're almost running out, so we need to order more soon. Typically, it covers this whole area because we order them in bulk.
Yeah, and
for us that way.
Nick's not a short guy, and each of these is almost as tall as him, and that's running out.
Yeah, so this is our kind of styrofoam area. We're glad these used to be in our backyard, so we're glad we have a home for them. That's inside.
And I mean, just so people understand, when you're dealing with orders in volume, this much styrofoam is how long?
This?
Yeah.
Roughly 2 months-ish.
2 months.
Yeah, roughly.
And that's like a small child's bedroom worth of styrofoam.
Yeah, that's the only downside about the EPS styrofoam. They just take up so much space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but
there's
they're the most economical, and they work great. Yeah, so
Sweet.
far. Yeah.
So let's talk about water changes with the Caridinas, because this is one thing you do kind of different compared to everything else.
Yeah, so this is our brine shrimp station. We feed our nanofish brine shrimp, and find that works very well. So yeah, I mean I have a little pump that we drain the water for each tank, and we drain them roughly about 25%-ish, and then we have a deionizer, and which works great. It's much better. I mean, as you can see, I tested an RO system, but it doesn't flow. I mean, the flow rate is so slow, and I realized our water here, so the TDS is much lower. So we tested out the DI system, and that works fine. That works great. So this is a simple DI system just for car washes, really. So, but the TDS out of this system here is at a 0 ppm. So because our water is so soft, we can get away with it here in Seattle. So after draining it, we just top it up with that, and then we have a GH powder, and I just mix in with water, with DI water, and we just we have a measurement and squirt as much GH as needed to bring the TDS back up to 100. And yeah, so that's how I do our weekly water changes. So it's working so well so far. So it takes me about an hour and a half to do this many tanks. It's not too bad. But I'm definitely experimenting with using these metal auto top-up valves in the future. We just haven't had time. I just haven't had time to finish. So this is a work in progress. But this is how I've been doing the water changes for this system so far.
Awesome.
Yeah.
one thing I want to do next is let's talk about kind of your packing process, because I really like the way you're doing things.
Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of the rough packing process is I'll catch a bunch of shrimp, and then we have a pick list, and we know how many bags of each variety we have for that day, and then I'll catch them and bag them. As we bag them, we put them in these shelves. These are picking shelves. So we stock them here first, and we put the bags in these shelves. And each little box, each little container is labeled for the variety and how many is in each bag. And that's the same for our rest of our varieties down the line. And yeah, that's kind of a packing process, packing process and then a picking process. And after that, we'll go through each packing slip, and I'll take one of these trolleys with the packing slip and kind of pick from these shelves whatever the order contains, and yeah, we'll box them and then ship them out, and we do that for each order. So in our home, we used to pack one order at a time, and we found that worked really well from home because it's only such a small space. I could run to one tank and back to the packing table, and it's a pretty short distance, so we could do that pretty efficiently. But in this larger space, I'll probably be having like 50,000 steps a day, just running around, packing each order and catching each shrimp and each fish, and it'll just be exhausting for Gwen and I. So we found that this method here works best for this area. We tried this out at home before, and we found that the downside is we didn't have space at home for these shelves.
Yeah.
So in this space, we had the luxury to actually have these shelves to actually do it this way, this method. And the great thing about it is if we do make a mistake, if we do miss something out, I can, after packing, fulfilling the orders, we can walk through the shelves and be like, okay, we missed one bag of a Blue Dream 10, and we'll go figure out which order that we missed out from before actually giving it to the postman. So that helps us reduce the number of misshipments we have.
Yeah.
Because it's just two of us, so it's and fulfilling that many orders a week, we definitely want to make the system as robust and as foolproof as possible, where we minimize the amount of mistakes. And when we do hire people, we make the process as simple as possible, so folks can go through the same process we do, and maintain the quality and minimize the misshipments that we have.
Yeah, I really like it from a perspective of helping your efficiency, one.
Yeah.
But two, more importantly, it's a quality control level.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? We're trying to minimize mistakes as much as possible, and I like the fact that you're thinking about that all the way to like the final packing process.
Right. And the great thing about these shelves is they're all on wheels. So if we do decide to change the whole arrangement of it, we can.
Yeah.
Just to maximize the space here.
Sweet.
Yep.
There you go. So, if you've made it this far, a couple things I want to go over. Number one, if you're a previous customer of Shrimpy Business, I just wanted to hear from you. I want to hear about your experience. If you've never shopped with them before, maybe now's a time to try them out. There is a coupon code that's going to be down in the description. I worked with Nick, and Nick was talking to me. He's like, hey, do we want to set up a thing? And, maybe we give you like a referral code. And I said, I don't want anything as a referral. Like, I'm happy to just help your business. But instead, I would rather, let's set a discount code and allow those of you who are watching, maybe whether you're existing customers or new customers, have an opportunity to get a discount and try them out and get some shrimp or some fish or some plants, some shrimp food, all sorts of stuff, right? Just as a heads up, it's for the first 100 customers that use it, which should be plenty. It'll last for a while, but basically you can use the link in the description down below, and it will give you a discount. I don't earn anything off of that. I'm just trying to pass on a little savings to you guys and help a local business with some owners that I have come to consider friends in the fish industry. So with that being said, I'd love to hear your comments down below. Just what'd you think? Should we do more stuff like this? Should we go back and check in on them in another year or so and see how they've changed even more? I know I want to hear from you. Is there something in particular that really caught your eye? Whatever that may be, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. If you didn't enjoy this video, hit the thumbs down twice, just so I know double how much you didn't appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. It is one of the best ways to tell the great YouTube algorithm gods that, like, hey, I like this content, and maybe somebody else will. And it helps a lot of us small fish tubers keep doing what we're doing. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.